So first of all, it's important to understand that we never left the Middle East region. We've had a sizable contingent of forces in the Middle East for a while, working alongside our partners in areas like regional security and stability. So the deployment of these additional forces are there to do a couple of things. Most importantly, to send a clear message of deterrence to whether it be state or non-state actors, that they should not exploit the situation in Israel to try to escalate this. What we want is to prevent a broader regional conflict, and so that's mission number one. Number two is to ensure that we have the forces in the Middle East region to protect U.S. forces and our partners as they conduct their important missions. For example, in Iraq and Syria, as you know, we have forces there at the invitation of the government of Iraq to fight ISIS and ensure that ISIS can't come back. So again, these missions are important. We'll continue to stay very focused on deterring a broader regional conflict and protecting U.S. forces wherever they're serving. Well, as I mentioned, U.S. forces are in Iraq at the invitation of the government of Iraq to assist their security forces in defeating ISIS. The same reason we're in Syria. Those forces are there for one reason and one reason only, and that's the enduring defeat of ISIS. And so unfortunately, as we've seen in the past, Iranian-backed proxies have conducted several attacks against our forces serving in those areas. And so what you saw last Thursday was we took very targeted surgical airstrikes on some IRGC facilities, a weapons storage facility, an ammunition facility, to send a clear message that we will protect and defend our forces, and we will take appropriate action at a time and place of our choosing. We do not want a wider conflict with Iran. We do not seek conflict with Iran, but we will never hesitate to protect our forces that are serving overseas doing important work. So I'm not going to get into any hypotheticals. Our focus with Israel is on ensuring that they have what they need to protect their people. As you know, going back to October 7th, Hamas conducted a brutal, cruel terrorist attack, killing 1,400 Israeli civilians, as well as taking hostages. So we're very focused on ensuring they have what they need to protect their people. At the same time, we recognize the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which is why you see the U.S. government working very closely with Israeli, Egyptian officials and other NGOs in the region to ensure that aid can get into Gaza. The last thing we want to see are innocent civilians, whether they be Palestinian or Israelis, dying or being injured. The common denominator here, unfortunately, is Hamas, not only brutally killing 1,400 Israelis, but also putting civilians in harm's way in Gaza by using them as human shields. So we're going to continue to stay focused on trying to prevent this from becoming a bigger conflict, while at the same time working to protect innocent civilians. Yeah, so when it comes to the operations being conducted by the IDF, that's really for them to talk about. The United States is not participating in those operations. We're not directing those operations, nor are we advising the Israelis on specific operational aspects of their plan. What we are doing is, again, talking to the Israelis about what their defensive needs are, while at the same time also encouraging them that as they conduct their operations to take into account the laws of war, to ensure the protection of civilians, and to think through the second and third order effects here, because again, at the end of the day, we all want to see Palestinians, Israelis living peacefully and safely with security in the region. So again, we'll continue to stay focused on that and continue to stay very focused on preventing a broader escalation of this conflict throughout the region. So after the 7 October terrorist attacks by Hamas, we reached out to our Israeli partners and offered planning and intelligence assistance in terms of hostage recovery. And so that support continues in terms of providing the Israelis with information in terms of hostage recovery. There is no more important priority for us as a country than to protect our own citizens as well. So again, this will continue to be a priority going forward. Well, so I've seen those press reports. Again, I'm going to refer you to the Israelis to talk about their operations, their timelines. That's really for them to discuss. Again, as I mentioned, our focus is on communicating with our Israeli partners to ensure we understand what their security assistance needs are, but then also working with regional partners to deter a broader conflict from happening. And it's important too to highlight that we're not just speaking with the Israelis, we're speaking with our partners throughout the region to consult, to get their advice on how best to prevent this from escalating, because again, no one wants to see a wider regional conflict, no one wins in that scenario. Again, we do not want to see any innocent civilian killed. Every loss of an innocent life is tragic. Again, this is why you see us speaking with our Israeli partners, encouraging them as they conduct and plan their operations to take civilian safety into account. It's also why you see us putting such a large emphasis on ensuring that humanitarian aid can get into Gaza, because again, at the end of the day, we want to see Israelis and Palestinians, all people in the region, living safely and securely. Well, again, I'll let Israel speak to their operations. We have been consulting with our Israeli partners, again, advising them to think through their planning, to take into account their targeting process, important things like mitigation of civilian casualties, being deliberate in their approach. But at the end of the day, it is their operation. They're going to do what they need to do to protect their citizens from Hamas. And again, our focus is going to continue to be on not only supporting them in their security assistance needs, but also trying to prevent a broader conflict. Look, as I mentioned, no one wants to see innocent civilians dying. It's despicable that you have a group like Hamas using civilians as shields in some of their facilities throughout Gaza. But again, for our part, we'll continue to talk with our Israeli partners and ensure that they are taking into account the laws of war. And I'll just leave it at that.